Let's just say what everybody knows, but not many people are willing to admit publicly. Muslim society is way more violent than Western society and Jewish society in every respect. And this is really easy to prove. Let me explain. Now, trigger warning, I will be using logic here. So if you are offended by rational thinking, now is the time to stop watching. Israel is very much hated throughout the Muslim world, and this is true today more than ever. But is Israel really the biggest problem in the Middle East and in the Muslim world? Well, if you start your day with Al Jazeera or any other Muslim media, you would be forgiven for thinking that it is. But if you zoom out and take a look at all of the Muslim countries and the number of people dying violent death, then the picture, although very different, quickly becomes crystal clear. The group that has killed the most Arabs in the course of wars in the last decades is, yes, Arabs. And second place goes to Persians. In the last 40 years, Persians, who are Muslims but not Arabs, have killed around 1 million Arabs, about 800,000 in wars with Iraq and another 200,000 in Syria and Yemen. I bet you've never even thought about that. Maybe you didn't even know it. And how would you? The simple fact is that when Muslims kill other Muslims, nobody cares. Not the media and not even the Muslims themselves. Let me tell you something I think might surprise you. The deadliest conflict in the Middle East right now is the war in Yemen. Have you seen any demonstrations in the Muslim neighborhoods in London or Paris or in any universities in the States? Have you seen it in the daily news on TV? I guess not. The thing is that if you can't blame Israel for the conflicts in the Middle East, then nobody cares about them. I follow some Muslim figures on YouTube, Hassan Nabi, Bassem Youssef, Muhammad Hijab, Mahdi Hassan, and a few others. They can be very articulate when it comes to Israel. Yet when it comes to Muslims killing Muslims, they suddenly have no words. Since they can't find their words, I'm going to fill in the blanks and discuss the biggest problem facing the Muslim world. Now, why am I saying all this? Am I trying to divert attention away from the war in Israel? Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. How many articles, posts, and demonstrations have you seen about Israel in the last year? Probably about 14 million. How many have you seen about the war in Yemen? 3? 7? Instead of discussing the conflict in Israel, as I do very often, I want to offer a broader view that you have probably never heard about. There is a great indicator of who is right and who is wrong. Just look at how people behave inside their own houses, so to speak, and you will also understand how they behave outside. If you told me that the Palestinians and the Muslim countries surrounding Israel were peaceful countries with thriving minorities, with openness, with democracy, but they have a problem with Israel, I would say, okay, let's check this out. But that is not the case. When I look at the Muslim world, and correct me if I'm wrong, I see high levels of violence in all fields. Political violence, violence against women, violence against minorities. Hindu, Christians, and basically all other minorities suffer in Muslim countries, and violence against gay people. Almost all of the worst countries to be gay in are Muslim. Some, particularly those on the left, will argue that Muslim countries are poor, and that is why you have more violence. But even if you look at the rich Muslim countries, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, you won't find any democracy or good standards of human rights there. And by the way, they are rich not because of intellectual properties, but because they are sitting on oil. It isn't hard to be rich if you are sitting on a pile of gold. Maybe it is the Middle Eastern sun that causes people to be violent. Let's look at Europe. Here is a small story from Denmark. In 1992, Denmark accepted 321 Palestinians. In 2019, the Danish government checked what had happened to them, and it turns out that 64% of them has acquired a criminal record. Are the Danes, a peaceful nation that is famous for Legoland and butter cookies, actually so racist towards Arabs that the Palestinians simply had to become violent? I don't know. Let's see what's going on in Sweden. Sweden used to be a very safe country for women, but since the country opened its borders to immigration from Muslim countries, Sweden has become less safe. How do I dare say this? Easy. As a true feminist, women's rights and safety are more important to me than being politically correct. In 2006, a Muslim group kidnapped and killed Ilan Halimi in Paris. The same thing happened in 2017 to Sarah Halimi, and a year after that to Miri Knoll, an 85-year-old Holocaust survivor who was killed by a Muslim. Have you ever heard of a Muslim being murdered by Jews in France? But there is something interesting. How did the Jewish community in France reacted to these events? Did the Jews start to attack Muslims? Did they burn down mosques? Did they riot? No, no, and no. On the other hand, when Muslim criminals were shot by the French police, there were a lot of rioting and violence from the Muslim community. I could give you so many more examples. Just pick a country. The proportion of Muslims in UK jails is roughly 4 times higher than their population in the general population. And there is a side note. Half of young Muslims in the UK think that homosexuality should be illegal. And I haven't yet said a word about terrorism and the fact that thousands of Muslims who were born in Britain want to join ISIS. And don't you find it interesting that Hindus suffer from British colonialism, but a Hindu has never committed a terror attack in the UK? I'm not going to sugarcoat the problem of Muslim violence with a bit of Hamas. In Piers Morgan's interview with Bassem Youssef, Piers Morgan says, I love Arabic food.
I love Arabic food.
This says it all. When there is nothing good to say about a culture, even for a great journalist, the last resort is to say, I love your food. If you disagree with me or think I'm cherry-picking my facts, give me a few examples that contradict what I'm saying here. I don't know, maybe find a case of Jews attacking a mosque in Belgium or in Wisconsin. See if you can. So what is behind the high levels of violence in Muslim society? Muslim society is extremely religious. So is it the Quran? I'm no expert on the Quran. And in general, I don't like blaming books. I do know that in the Jewish Bible, there are many stories that today would be rated 18 plus for any number of reasons, including violence. The New Testament depicts Jesus as peaceful, but his followers, the Crusaders, were not so peaceful. In fact, the Catholics and the Protestants were doing a great job of killing each other 400 years ago. But today, they have managed to stop killing one another and live peacefully together, even though the differences between Catholics and Protestants are precisely the same as they were 400 years ago. Muslim society is more violent not because of Israel and not because of the Jews and not because of colonialism and not because of poverty and not because of the Quran. It is violent because of the values of Muslim society today. Peace between Israel and the Arab countries and peace within Muslim nations will only come when Muslim society changes its values. It is not a popular thing to say, but that is the simple, obvious truth that people do whatever they can to avoid. If you agree with me, share this video with people who need to see it. Please like this video and subscribe. The next video will be about the lies of Bassem Youssef. See you next week. Yalla bye.